It's RT_com. Well, we're joined in the studio now by our correspondent Sarah Firth. She's just returned from Syria and give us a first-hand accounts of what's been going on there. Thank you for joining us here, Sarah. Now, according to unconfirmed reports from the city of Homs, hundreds of people were killed last night by the authorities, but Damascus is blaming terrorists for this. What's really happening from what you could see?
Well, I mean, it's extremely hard to sort of corroborate and verify these reports. I think, like anyone, I was following the sort of Twitter updates and trying to get in touch with people on the ground there yesterday when these reports were coming through from Homs. I mean, just devastating reports, and, you know, the numbers are sort of everywhere. Very, very high numbers reported to have been killed, and it sounded like there was certainly a very, very heavy crackdown happening there in Homs. But, of course, you know, even when we were there in the country, it's extremely hard to really get to the bottom of what's happening, to get to these areas, to see it with your own two eyes, and to be able to verify that information. And so certainly, I mean, I've been speaking to people again today that we were in contact with in some of these areas, and to be honest with you, most of the phones are out of reception at the moment. There's sort of reports of electricity being down in many of these areas, and in the centre of Damascus, the people that we were working with are saying that, you know, at the moment they're waiting for information too. So it's exceptionally hard to sort of gauge exactly what's going on at the moment.
So it is that difficult then to see all these places, to find out what's actually going on. So what about this Arab League observer mission then? They're saying they've been going to certain areas, but what have they managed to see or do then? Has it been a waste of time?
Well, you know, one of the benefits of the Arab League Observers Mission being there was that it did give an opportunity, certainly for the media, to access some of these sort of areas, hotspot areas, that were to travel to by ourselves would have been very, very dangerous, and they'd sort of become no-go areas. So the Arab League sort of opened the doors a little bit and allowed a bit more of an information flow to get out from these places. So certainly that was one of the benefits. But look, you know, right from the beginning, these guys really had the odds stacked against them. We spent, you know, over a week sort of following them around day to day from the beginning, where they set off from the hotel, and, you know, they were doing their best with what they had, but these were people who weren't necessarily trained for this sort of work. They were ill-equipped. I mean, they really didn't have much on them, sort of the basics, a camera and a pen and paper. And so they really met with the same obstacles that a lot of the journalists who were following them met, that they, you know, for them, they found it very hard as well to sort of understand what exactly was happening and what they were seeing.
Now, the Syrian regime says it's really fighting a foreign-funded insurgency. From what you could see there, was there any truth in that?
Of course, you know, we came across ourselves the armed groups, the Free Syrian Army, the armed terrorists, whatever you want to call them. They exist. There are groups of them there. They say that they're protecting the civilians in these different towns and villages. We spent a lot of time with the Free Syrian Army. We spoke to a lot of them. Some of them were army defectors who'd returned, that were locals to these areas, returned to protect their families. Some of them were civilians who'd sort of got hold of arms and joined that group as well. It's really hard to say. You know, in Syria at the moment, there's a very strong dual narrative that's come out, and it's part of what makes it so hard to figure out what's going on. You know, you don't envy the Security Council at the moment for the decision that they're going to have to make, because you simply, even when you're there, find it very difficult. You know, what I know is what I saw with my own two eyes, and it's very easy to believe what you're being told doesn't exist until you see it. And so, you know, we saw armed groups, but we also saw tanks, security force tanks around the towns and villages, despite that being part of the peace plan for them to be removed. We saw bullet holes, we saw heavy artillery marks in the buildings, and, you know, there are these armed groups, but there are also a huge number of people, civilians, families, children, who are in these areas, who are trying to protest, who are coming out to the protest, feel very scared about the risks they're taking doing that, and feel that they're being denied their rights to voice their political views.
Well, talking about those civilians, I mean, how much support does President Assad hold amongst those people?
Again, I mean, the situation in the country right now is very divided. It's very concerning to see those divisions on sort of every level of this conflict now that exists. You have areas where it's very strongly pro-regime, you have areas where it's very strongly anti. We've obviously seen the pockets moving closer towards the centre of resistance in these different towns and villages. Certainly very divided, very divisive situation. I mean, it's hard to get a gauge on what's happening, and, you know, it's very sad to see the failure to a large extent of the Arab League mission, because right now you don't have anything, anyone working to try and bridge these gaps that are just widening every single day. And these people feel very alone. I mean, we can't corroborate or verify the reports that were coming through from places like Homs, but, you know, you can see and hear from a lot of these people and the videos that are coming through. Yeah, they really feel like they're out there on their own at the moment. And so right now, as the situation stands, the future's not looking great. There doesn't seem any way to work towards bridging these gaps.
OK, just back from Syria with those first-hand reports.